All right. Hey, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Workplace Security Partner Community Call for May. The topic today is going to be ATP, what's new and what's due. Just want to make sure that everybody can hear me and you're receiving audio. So if you can tell me the beverage that you had this morning, coffee, tea, water, Coke, and type that into the message window. That'll just let me know that everyone's hearing audio. All right, I'm not seeing any messages come in, so I'm a little concerned. But yeah, if anyone can hear me, please type something in the message window.
We need to kick off the event builder bot again or something?
Oh no, the event, yeah, went ahead and started. Okay, here's one message coming in too. Okay, great. All right, thanks. Had me worried there. All right, glad everyone can hear me. So we'll go ahead and get started. Normally I go over a couple intro slides, just telling you the resources that are available for the different partner communities. So now you're listening to the Modern Workplace Community Call. We have monthly calls for productivity, security, as well as Windows and devices. So next Tuesday will be the Windows and devices call for Modern Workplace, and the topic for that call will be Windows 10 IoT. So definitely please go ahead and register for that call, and we'll have some good information to share in regards to Windows IoT. Other communities, business applications, apps and infrastructure, data and AI, as well as open source solutions, they also have a monthly call. I'll put these intro slides into our Yammer group, and I'll post a link to the Yammer group so that you have these available for you. But with that, I want to pass things over to Andrea Fisher to talk about ATP.
Hey everyone, this is Andrea Fisher on the OCP technical team covering security. I've been at Microsoft for 7 years now and have been everything from an ATS to a TSP to a GBB. So great to talk to everybody. I am going to share my desktop, and we're going to start with just one quick slide, and then we're going to do all chatting. So, of course, it always goes backwards for me. So, for those of you who have had any familiarity with Windows Defender ATP, and as you all know, we now have 3 ATP solutions, right? We have Office ATP, which was the original. So a lot of times when you hear people just say ATP, they mean Office Advanced Threat Protection. Then the second one was Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, which has been around, I want to say 18 months, maybe almost 2 years now. And the newly added Azure ATP, right, which is really ATA in the cloud. But for today, we're going to talk about Defender ATP. And when we introduced Defender ATP back in the 1507 version of Windows, there was really only one leg to our octopus here, right? It was endpoint detection and response. This is a category where we compete against Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Cybereason, right? This is our post-breach detection tool. And until very recently, that was the only leg of our octopus, or whatever a sixpus might be. But what we have added into this in the last version or two, today we'll look at advanced hunting, which is one of the biggest requests we've got from some of the more sophisticated security operations teams. Security posture, we'll look at that, which is a new feature in the 1803 version of Windows and the 1803 version of Defender ATP. We'll also look at the new auto remediation capabilities, which were introduced just in this 1803 version. We'll also talk briefly about how it integrates with Defender AV and how it integrates with Defender Exploit Guard. So, like I said, that's the only slide we're going to show today. And then we're going to start with, let's see, I'm going to do some dragging and dropping so we're all looking at the right window. So this is the Defender Security Center. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but as of about a month ago, if you spin up a new tenant on demos.microsoft.com, you will get a Defender Advanced Threat Protection as part of your tenant. So this is the first time you've ever been able to kick the tires of this on your own. So let's just start out really quickly since that is something you can now do. I just want to talk about how you might do that. So, spin it up. For me, I built 3 Windows VMs. I built a 1709, an 1803, and a Windows Insider. And what you do with those, this is our settings. You won't have to go through the general setup that a customer would go through where you set up the data retention and the data storage. That's already going to be done for you. But what you will need to do is onboard these machines. So if you come down to machine management onboarding, you can see you can onboard your Windows 10 machines. If you're bold, you can do Windows 7 and 8. This is coming this summer, but you should be able to do this yourself today to kick the tires on that. You could also do a server if you were so inclined, or download the Mac and Linux client. If you're just going to do this for your demo purposes, the easiest way to do it is just to download the local script. This is a PowerShell script that's going to light up a few things in the registry and do what we call onboard the machine. But if you wanted to do this in a large environment or just to see what it's like, you could deploy it with group policy, with SCCM, or with Intune. Once you onboard a machine, you can just run this command, and that should show you some information back into the console. Okay, that's how you set it up, but now let's talk about what's new. So when we were talking about security posture, I'm sure most of you have heard of the Office 365 Secure Score. We have now introduced the Windows Secure Score. For the Windows Secure Score, actually I may show you a different version. Let me see if I can show you the newest version of Secure Score here. Yep, so this is the newest one. So to get your Secure Score for Windows, you must have Defender ATP, right? So you must have a Windows E5 license or an M365 E5 license, and you must have enabled Defender ATP. So once you do that, the built-in sensor that sits on the Windows device will start picking up this kind of information. So all of the things here that add up to our Secure Score, how healthy is Defender ATP? How healthy is Defender AV? How healthy is our OS? These are the additional security features that we can report on here, right? Exploit Guard, App Guard, Smart Screen, Hello, BitLocker, right? If you're running a third-party encryption software and you're not using BitLocker, you can configure Secure Score to wipe that out. If you're running a third-party AV, if you're running McAfee or Symantec and you want to get rid of this, you just configure Secure Score and wipe that out. The thing I love about this view, and I should tell you, when I'm selling this, when I'm talking to customers about this, depending on who I'm talking to, if I'm talking to the SecOps team or the security team, I don't usually start here. But if I'm talking to managers or CISOs, any C-level exec, this is where I start. Because the SecOps team is going to be interested in the nitty-gritty details. Your high-level execs, they're depending on where they came from, may not even really understand the purpose here, or if they came from a security background, they may not be as interested in the details, but everyone loves a pretty chart, right? But here we can go, and I'm going to click on OS security updates because this, to me, I'm very passionate about these days is patching, right? At RSA a few weeks ago, the NSA stood up and said in the last 2 years, they had not responded to a zero-day attack. They had responded to attacks where something should have already been patched, right? So we're all struggling with patching, not enough people, not enough time to do things. But here, with our OS security updates, we can look at our optimization. And this is going to tell us 3 machines are missing the latest security updates. 1 machine, the sensor's not working properly. And 6 machines are running Windows Insider, but they're running an old build, right? I'm a former SEC admin before I joined Microsoft, and this was always a struggle for me. I would love to have something like this, right? So I click on, and it's going to actually show me the 3 machines that are missing patches, right? These are the 3 machines that are my troublemakers. I can export this to a CSV file, pop that in an email or whatever I want to do with it, and let my patching team know that these machines are missing patches. During the next change window, I want you to handle this as quickly as possible, right? So when we're talking about the security posture that we were talking about back here, right? Security posture. That was the first item. Now I'm going to show you, let me see which of my many windows that I have open. Here we go. This is another function for our security posture. Power BI is built into Defender ATP. If I were so inclined, I could come in here and I can look at the Power BI reports. You can create a dashboard, and that's going to list for you, there's 5 canned reports, or you could actually download the connector and build your own custom reports. But for our intents and purposes, we're going to look at an existing report. This, as you can see, these are the alerts across the reports. There's a machine report, an alert report, an investigation report. But we're going to look at the security update report. This is teeny tiny. I know you probably can't see this very well, but it tells us here, this is a different tenant, so that's why there are 7 machines missing updates when our previous one there was only 3. We can see the KBs that are missing by date, right? Looks like October got missed. We can look at the machines that are missing by CVE severity. We can look up by CVE. But to me, the best part is right here in the middle. This is teeny tiny, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but it says Neodium, Petya, Return of Coppersmith, and WannaCrypt, right? WannaCry. So if I click this little checkbox next to Petya, this whole page is going to change. And within a matter of seconds, I'm going to know that these 2 machines are vulnerable to Petya, and this is the KB that's missing, right? Like I said, when I was a SCCM admin, I would have died to have this kind of crisp information where I could clearly make a difference in security in a matter of minutes, maybe hours, depending on what your change window is. But right, the ability to patch or to see what's specifically missing, or like here's Neodium, right? Click on Neodium. It looks like we have actually 5 machines that are vulnerable to the Neodium vulnerability, and we can see here these 3 KBs are what we're missing, right? So again, this is just to help your security posture, to help you very quickly improve the security and posture of your environment. Y'all probably may see more products out there than I do, but I don't know anyone who's doing something that is this easy to use. I think huge selling points here, right? So we just talked about what's new with security posture. Let's go look at the advanced hunting features. So we will come over to our advanced hunting features. So this is new in 1803. You can see this is the schema of all of the Defender ATP alerts. And you can literally make sure someone... Okay, sorry, it looked like someone was talking in the window. So this is the Cousteau, K-U-S-T-O, not Jacques Cousteau, but the Cousteau programming language. And these are all of the parts of the schema that you can query on. It's going to come pre-populated with some queries for you to learn from. And also, you can save and share queries. There's also a GitHub out there. If you clicked on these little guys here, it's going to take you to the community center, and that's where people share information, ask questions. Actually, the product team gets on here and answers questions for people. Also, this is how you can get to the GitHub, which will have a bunch of scripts available for you. But just for fun, let's see. Let's look at the Smart Screen query and see if that brings us back any information. But let's do a get started. And I just want to show you guys how easy this is to do. If you have any scripting background at all, anything from VB to Perl or whatever, but let's say I want to look at process creation events. See, I don't even, it's kind of like PowerShell, right? If I hit tab, it automatically populates the rest of the command for me, right? So I'm going to look at process creation events. When I hit enter, it brings me up this box here, and I'm going to say where. Event time is greater than 3 days ago, right? So we are going to look for any process create events in the last 3 days. I have no idea if this is going to bring anything up, but let's see. So we did. Look at all these. These are all process create events that happened in the last 3 days. And if we were so inclined, we could dig in here and start researching what's been going on with Jacob's laptop here, right? So we can take a look at Jacob's laptop, see why we see all these process create events happening on his laptop. So yeah, I'm starting out with showing you what's new. I probably should have asked how many of you were familiar with the console first. We maybe should have gone over the basics. But since that's how we started, that's what we're going to keep doing. We're going to look at the auto investigation stuff, and then maybe let's do a little remediation and talk about the product itself. So auto remediation is the newest feature of 1803, and probably, of course, it's not going to have anything. Let's go to my other tenant and see what we've got over there. Maybe this one will be better. So you guys may remember in the news when we purchased Hexadite. So we purchased Hexadite, gosh, I don't know, definitely over a year ago. And the Hexadite was famous for their security automation features. So at the time, they would take, you know, an event from your SIM or maybe from your ticketing system, and if it looked like something was suspicious, they would talk to your Palo Alto firewall and block a port or something like that, right? We have purchased them, so their integration with third party is no longer available. So today, they are integrated into Defender ATP. And the idea here is to take the burden off of our security analysts. So the average analyst, or the average company, I think it's about 500 alerts a day. The average analyst can handle about 10. So our goal here is to take the things that we can automate, and in this first version of 1803, it's limited for our automated investigations. But let's go take a look at one. Let's see. Let's look at one that's suspicious access to an LSAS service. So you can see this is what happens in the page. We can start at the top, and we can see that Defender AV detected sharpshooter malware. That's the alert that kicked off this automated investigation. And the name of the machine was Windows 10 Advanced ATP, right? It was just the name of the test machine. This is all of the things that we analyzed right here, right? We looked at 43 files, 140 processes, 371 drivers, 8 IP addresses, right? These are all the things that we've looked at. And we could, if we were so interested, we could literally look at every single item on the list. And see everything that had been researched, everything that had been looked through. The thing that I like about the automated investigation is that the same thing is going to happen every time, right? One of the, whether it's automation of any kind, like I said, I don't know if anybody remembers good old Orchestrator or ever worked with it, but whether it's Orchestrator, whether it's PowerShell, whatever it might be, the best part about it was it prevents human error, right? The same thing happens every single time, right? So it doesn't matter if you're tired. It doesn't matter if it's the end of the day. It doesn't matter, whether your allergies are bothering you. But nobody's going to say, oh, I already know what this is, right? So everything is going to happen the same way every single time. And so when these automated features alert on a specific type of threat, so we automatically launch an investigation with Defender ATP, there's something called the sense service. That's running all of the time. That's the thing that's pulling in the information from the machines. And that could be anything, like we said, from a process create event, a registry change event, a creation of a new user, right? Any of those things. But when we kick off this automated investigation, a new service is going to launch, and it's called Sense IR. That kicks off on the subject endpoint, right, on the PC in question, and it mimics the responses that a SecOps analyst would carry out, like we just said, right? So the first thing we do is we collect all running processes, all known persistence methods. We extract all the relevant historical data, which is, well, we'll talk about that later. We analyze that collected data to determine if there are any additional threats. And we do that by looking at the Microsoft security graph and the detonation service. And then we pivot on any malicious items that are found. For example, based on the data collected by Sense, are there any other endpoints that have executed the same malicious code, right? We'll automatically add those to the investigation. And then if we can, we're going to remediate the threats that have been found. So we do this automatically or semi-automatically, right? So in the automated way, it's just going to, like let's say it's going to quarantine a file. That's going to happen if you set it up to automatic. But maybe you don't want it to quarantine automatically. Maybe you want it to research and then come back and you decide if it's going to quarantine or not. So that's what we mean by semi-automated. It's going to wait until a security analyst explicitly approves each one of the remediation actions, right? So in this first version, the automated responses that we can take are quarantine a file, terminate a process, unload a driver, stop or disable a service, quarantine a registry key, right? So that is in, we'll call it V1 of automation. Now in V2, I don't know for sure what items are coming, but the goal is, right, instead of quarantining a file or registry key, we're going to set it back to what it was before. If we notice that there is outbound connection to a known command and control server, we're going to block that outbound port, right? So as we move forward with versions of Defender ATP, these automation features are going to become richer and more able to protect us. That was a lot of talking. I'm going to take a breath and take a sip of my Diet Coke. Am I overwhelming everybody? Does anyone have any questions? I want to take that as an, hey.
Hey, Andrea. There was one question that came in, and to all the participants, if you do have any questions, just feel free to type those in the message window, and during breaks, I'll be sure to ask those. But the one question that came in is, can we get the URL of the scripts, etc.?
The URL of what script?
Let's see, for Stephen, if there's any clarification on the question you have there, please let me know.
Okay. If you're asking, let's talk a little bit about the investigation timeline, because I think that's the direction that you're going in, is what can I know about what's happening? And tell me if I'm wrong. If you're asking about the remediation script, that's different than a script that was used for an attack. So, Stephen, if you want to clarify later, but in the meantime, let's just look at the console. I should also mention this is also one of the new things here, which is assessing the machine risk. So this feature adds into, let's go back to the slide deck really quickly, to conditional access, right? So we already have quite a bit of ability with conditional access, right? We can protect group memberships, location, device platform, but device compliance and active threats on the device, these are new. And where that health risk comes from is here, right? So if our machine risk is high, and we have conditional access set up to access this data, and someone tries to connect to the internal network, right? They'll get a pop-up that says, sorry, your machine's at risk. It's going to have to be remediated before you can connect to the data, right? So just an additional feature of conditional access. But for now, actually, let's go back and start at the beginning. So if I were a security analyst and I received an alert, this is the page I would come to start, right? Here's all my active alerts. Here is my machines at risk. Here are my users at risk. Machines with active malware alerts, right? Now, I'm going to start with Jonathan's machine, just so that we can look at some of the interconnectivity with other features. So when we come to Jonathan's machine, and maybe based on machine risk, right, if we say machine risk is high, one of the very first things we could do is isolate this machine, right? If I isolate the machine, it brings up the built-in Windows firewall, and it's going to shut down communication on all ports except for talking back to the Defender ATP Security Center here, right? We also, in the newer version, have the ability to, sorry, I'm switching back and forth between tenants here, but we'll isolate the machine. And you can see we can also keep the port open for Outlook and Skype, right? So that allows us to continue to communicate with the person on the other side, right? So I can allow communication, test, and then I can immediately IM and say, John, what did you just click on, right? Or whatever might have happened. But let's go back to, we also have the ability, maybe this is a machine risk low, and I just want to rerun antivirus. Now, this does preclude that you're using Windows Defender Antivirus. To use Defender Advanced Threat Protection, it is not required that you use Defender Antivirus. They do work better together. But if you want to run Cylance, if you want to run McAfee, we don't care, right? But you don't get that integration that we see here, right? We could also restrict an app execution, which would mean if the file or doc is not signed by Microsoft, it can't run, right? So these are the actions we can take on the device. But here we have, these are all the alerts related to this machine. And then below the blue line, these are all of the events we've collected from the machine. And like I said earlier, process create events, registry change events, all different kinds of things here, right? To me, I guess in a way, the way I look at it, this is noise until I get to signal, right? So if I click on a known vulnerable driver was loaded, here you can see it's turning gray. When I click on it, it's going to turn blue. You can see my little toilet brush started spinning. And when I click on that, every item that the artificial intelligence added up together to create this alert now shows up under the blue line, right? I hope that made sense. So now all of these items here are what made us come up with a known vulnerable driver was loaded, right? We can get more information about that. We can see a known vulnerable driver was loaded. So, right, this was capcom.sys. I don't know if we have any old Capcom fans out there from the good old days, but it's still a driver that many machines have and can be taken advantage of. And if we wanted to, we could even get more information. We could click on it, right? And if we were so inclined, we could manage our alerts from here. So we have the ability to use this as a ticketing system for maybe a smaller company who doesn't have their own ticketing system. This is the alert process tree and the incident graph. In the alert process tree here, we can click on any of these. I know they're probably tiny for you guys since I'm sharing my screen. These tiny little circles here, and we're going to get a flyout window. That's taking a while. That's going to tell us more information about what's happening with the OS kernel. You can see, it's so tiny, you can see there's a little bug here, capcom.sys, again, the same thing, right, with capcom.sys. We can see the SHA hash, the MD5 hash, we can see who signed it, the issuer, we can see what virus total says about it, we can see what Defender AV says about it, we can see how it was observed worldwide and how often it was observed in the organization. And then on the incident graph here, interesting, Jonathan W's machine, right, which is the machine that we're on, file capcom.sys. It's also gone over to Jackson K's machine, right? So we can see that something is spreading across our environment, right? Let's go back to Jonathan's machine. We can see abnormal code execution was observed, process privilege escalation due to a kernel exploit. Let's take a look at that one because this is our high alert here. We can see the access token was modified. All right, let's take a look at that. Again, we look at the tree, right? We can see that the windward access token was modified. And we can actually see how it was modified, right? Previously, the integrity level was medium, but something has kicked it up to system, right? And these are the privileges it has given itself, right? It's given itself impersonate privilege, debug and audit privilege, create page file privilege, right? So we're seeing, honestly, every bit of activity that these different alerts are taking, we can see what happened, right? I'm going to see if I can't find a PowerShell script in here for you, but we could actually see what PowerShell script might have run, right? Actually see the commands, right? For this specific event here, we're going to do a search in the machine timeline, right? So we can search by a hash, by a file, right? We can see all of these. I'm not going to read them to you because I know you can see them. This is just within the timeline. I can also do a search up here. I can search across for a different machine name, right? I want to search for Andrea's machine, John's machine, right? I could search by user, any of that kind of stuff, and that searches across the entire network. And then we talked about the advanced hunting as well, right? But for our intents and purposes here, we're going to search for Outlook. And we can come over here and we can say, I just want to see behaviors. We could say, what type of events do I want to see, right? I want to see alerts. I want to see antivirus events. I want to see firewall events, right? I have all those choices. I can also see what different user accounts I want to look for here, right? But I searched for Outlook, like I said, because I know this exploit. I know what happened. So for Jonathan, what happened, he received an email, was a phishing attack. It was an Outlook, and there was a Word doc that had a request for RFP. When he opened up the Word doc, it asked to enable a macro. And as we know, everyone says yes to that. And that's what started, right? Started dropping files to disk. So we can see that Outlook saved an attachment to disk. And we talked about the different ATPs, right? So this lets us get into the Office ATP console and see a little more about it. So here we can see in the Threat Explorer, right, that Jonathan, who is the machine we were on, right, Jonathan W., received that invitation to submit RFP at 9:31. Now, Office ATP at the time did not notice anything suspicious with this document, right? So it went ahead and let it on through. Now, because Defender ATP and Office ATP can talk to each other, they can both make each other smarter. So we can see here that when that same email came through 10 minutes later, directed to Ava, Office ATP blocked it this time. And this, a few minutes later, again, they tried to send it to Jay, and it was blocked this time. So now neither Ava or Jay got this email, so they couldn't click on that nefarious attachment. But now we know something we didn't know before, right? Looks like a phishing attack is going on, right? So now we can pivot back in, and let's take a look at Jay's machine from here. So we can come in here to Jay's machine, right? And he's got some alerts, right? Suspicious sequence of exploration activities, malicious. Oh, let's take a look at this one. Let's see what malicious PowerShell command was invoked on the machine. Let's see, PowerShell ran PowerShell command get value. PowerShell ran command update memory protection flags, right? This is what we were talking about. A malicious PowerShell command was invoked on the machine. Let's see what information we can get on that, right? So we can see these are all the PowerShell commandlets that ran in this script, right? And you can, I don't know if y'all can tell, these are little lightning bolts, which means this is, right, this is the alert evidence, right? Let's go back. And we can see here, like we said, so no red alerts, right? Our machine risk is only medium here. But what's interesting is if we looked at the logged on users, there's 2. That's not always suspicious, right? But it's worth taking a look at here. So let's look at who they are. Jay and Jonathan. Now we know Jonathan's machine's been compromised. So what's going on here? And then we look here, wait, all of these alerts are actually under the Jonathan user context, not the Jay user context. So something strange, right? Again, all our goal here is to find out what's happening, right? What strange things are happening. This also integrates with Azure ATP. So if Azure ATP had kicked up any alerts for us on this user, we would be able to click that from here. Let's see if Jonathan has anything for us if we do the same thing. Well, that's a lie. I know you should have some alerts here, but this is my demo environment, so it's not always perfect. But if so, we could open it up in Azure, and we could see what was going on, right? We can see that, that Jonathan Walcott is a sensitive account. We can look in the directory data. We can see his memberships. He's in domain users. But that's, I mean, Jonathan's a sales manager. Why is he in the admin group here, right? So again, this is giving us a broader scope across what's going on in our environment. And we can see that now Jonathan's password is set to never expire. But that's weird because we know that all of our users are set to have their password expire in 90 days. So what's happened, right? So the real story here, and we've been telling it to everyone for the past, right, what, year and a half, is that M365 Better Together story. That, again, was a lot of talking. So any questions there?
Hey, Andrea. Yeah, no new questions have come in yet.
Fine. I must be doing such a fantastic job.
Yes.
That, let's get that out of the way. Y'all don't need to see that. Hold, please. Now, I don't know how many of you have really looked at the threat protection stuff, or I should say the Defender Advanced Threat Protection. I will tell you one of the things that I think is the most confusing for folk. You can't call it Windows Defender, right, because Windows Defender means AV, and you can't call it ATP because most people think it means Office ATP. So I always try to call it Defender ATP or WD ATP just to make sure that the lines don't get crossed, because especially lately, we have had so many people be confused about what Defender AV can do versus what Defender ATP can do, right? I know you all know that, like I said earlier, this is part of Windows E5 or M365 E5. We can put these links in there afterward, but this is the holy grail of the sites for Defender ATP. So if you see here, it's Infopedia is not the main source of information for Defender ATP, though there certainly is some stuff out there. There's a whole list of Defender ATP internal webcasts, right? It talks about the automation stuff we talked about, some of the new detection capabilities, but we have tons of videos. We also have the latest decks, right? This is the latest Defender ATP overview, the latest antivirus, right? This is the latest thing about Defender ATP and Defender AV working together. We have information for the people who want to know more about Linux, Mac, Android usage. So all this information is the place to come, right? Also, we have a compete wiki on the information of our main competitors in the EDR space. But I just want to show you guys that to make sure if you did have further questions, that's a great place to come. I must have been talking really fast because I think I went through the exciting parts. We can look at maybe some of the newer detection techniques if you guys want to. Let's go to we can go into our machine view. Let's sort by name. Again, this is our list of machines here. We can look back over 6 months. We can look at the risk level here. Maybe I only want to look at high. We can go by OS platform. Maybe I only want to look at my Mac machines. Same thing by health state. Again, just different ways to parse out our data. So let's look at a NACS PC. We can see here, this is what we're talking about, how Defender AV and Defender ATP can work together. So this is a downloaded ransomware that was never seen before and got to the machine using a water hole attack on a company's public website. So search for so if we look here, at invoice.pdf, right, was blocked as untrusted by SmartScreen. So just really showing you guys how this all works again together, right? So Defender ATP used block at first sight. If you guys aren't familiar with all of the new changes to Defender AV, we should probably have a time to talk about that as well. Block at first sight is one of the greatest new features. There's a lot of misinformation still out there about Defender AV, that it's only using definitions, right? Everybody else is Gen 2 antivirus, but we're doing the same thing, if not better, using cloud-based intelligence. Like I said, I don't want to spend all of our time going through the nitty-gritty details unless you guys want to. But that is pretty much Defender ATP in a nutshell. Let's make sure that we talked about all of the new things. So we did talk about auto remediation. We talked about the security posture. We talked about advanced hunting. We talked about the integration with Defender AV. All the new exploit guard features, that's another story would be great to talk about, is all of the new stuff in Windows 10. and maybe Windows 1803. We did that recently for our team, and I think we all learned some stuff about the new productivity features as well as the new security features. So honestly, if nobody has any questions, I think I can wrap it up.
All right. Thanks, Andrea. Appreciate that information. And to all the partners that were able to join, thanks for attending. Again, next week we will have the Modern Workplace Windows and Devices call covering Windows 10 IoT, and that'll be Tuesday, May 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. So registration for that is the same link for registering here. It's aka.ms US Modern Workplace call. But let me see, there was a question that just came in. Maybe? Oh, no. Just a comment. Thanks. Appreciate that. Well, yeah, that wraps things up for today. And I'll go,
All right. Thanks,
go ahead
everybody.
and close out the call. Thank you.